All right, good evening. I'm RG O'Leary. We are here for the audit committee meeting for June 3rd. All board members and our student board member are present with the exception of Barbara Owens, who could not join us tonight. We have a pretty short agenda, I think. First item on our agenda is our minutes for April 9th were circulated. If anyone has any comments or questions on the minutes? Nope. All right. Thank you, Jim, for drafting those. Next up is claims auditor reports.
So there are just a couple items on the claims auditor report, a couple of exceptions and a couple of other items. They all have to do with athletics and they're relatively small. So no significant difference from prior to that.
Yeah. So I don't know if those made it up onto the posting for the, were they posted internally? Did you all see them? Could you see them?
I did not see them.
I didn't see them on the public site.
No.
But just everyone will get them to everybody. There were 4 exceptions, as Jim said, all athletics related, for April and May.
There were 2 on May 31st from, one was a softball tournament that hadn't had a PO for it. The next one is purchase through BSN Sports for $234 that did not have a PO. The other issues, 2 of them from April 16th. One is the requisition was in place timely for a track meet. It just wasn't processed through. The other part was a very late football helmet invoice for last year that came in. So we wouldn't have had a PO, so it was taken care of. That's why it's another issue rather than one exception.
Right. And the total value of those was less than 3,000, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. And thanks to Robin for preparing those. Next up, we have our current function level status document. I gave it a quick look. I didn't notice anything concerning or anything that jumped out at me. Anything to report, Jim?
Not really. The current expenditure plus encumbrance is a little under 29 million. As you'll see with the reserve and fund balance estimates, that's going to come in at the end of the year a little over 29 million, right around our 97.5 that we talk about all the time. So we're in pretty good shape there. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. There's nothing that's really completely
Nothing that's going to put us over budget.
No.
And we're pretty close to the end of the year, so we should have a good idea.
Oh, you say that.
And then we get an invoice for a football helmet from 2 seasons ago. Okay, so next, anyone else have any questions or comments? Great. School lunch profit and loss, Jim?
So as of the end of April, we are positive for the year by $6,700. That's a little unusual, and if you see the expenses for the current year are pretty much the same as they were year to date last year, but that's because we had a $40,000 equipment purchase that we had to make for our fund balance the year before. Right. So that difference of about 7% is really the increase that we've had year over year. I don't know where we're going to end because June is always a tricky month because you don't have as many students on campus at the secondary taking food. You also have a couple of half days at the end of the year in elementary where they don't have food. So it makes it a little difficult. You're trying to use up what you have in the freezer, but you're also don't have that many kids coming through. So.
Yeah, but we don't. So last year you mentioned we had that like $42,000 one-time payment. We don't have that this year.
Not current year. We haven't received anything from state ed on that, and we did in January of last year. So.
Oh, got it. Okay. All right. So all in all, a record year, I think, to run at a.
We'll see.
We'll see. But we're not considering transferring money from balances. So
if we don't have to transfer money, we're not going to transfer money. And we have a requirement if they're underwater to transfer money.
Right. So. All right, great. That's great news. Okay, next up on the agenda is a continuation of the payment fees for the school lunch accounts.
I included a couple emails in there, one from Christy where she went through Venmo and PayPal to analyze things. You'll note her issues with it. My issues are very similar. There's no way that we know of to put any of the fee on the parents using it. And then it's also very difficult to line everything up and get it in the proper place in our system. With Heartland Payment Systems, it's all connected into our school lunch system, so it's automatic. Those are the biggest issues. There's also another email from Heartland Payment Systems noting that that's the standard contract, that no one else gets a different number. We are going to heavily promote the annual option that we talked about. I think it was $13.95 for one student or $27.95 for multiple students. That will allow you just to do the e-check as many times as you want.
And also promoted the idea that folks could simply send in a check
Yes,
or cash.
we've done that, but we'll highlight that as well. Yep.
And as far as alternatives, the Venmo, the PayPal, didn't look like the fees were minimal, but I understand your point about how do you allocate it back out to the students, but it seems like for the amount of money we're taking in through the current platform, right? If you were to do the math on those fees, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it would be significantly less than what we suspect our parents are paying in convenience fees.
As far as the credit card side of things, I would say yes. I don't know about the e-check side of things, so I'm not sure how that would work because there would still be a fee. The e-check for the Heartland Payment Systems is a fixed $3.45. So if you look at that 2% on, I think it was Venmo, if you're going to put a significant amount on a number of students' accounts, that's going to add up real quick to that number as well.
And as far as alternatives to Heartland Payment Systems, is there anything out there? Other vendors, I'll say, software
Right.
vendors.
I'm certain there are other vendors. The problem is we use our system, the cafeteria, to the newest cloud-based version of the Nutrient system so that it works properly with it. And I wouldn't expect the fees to be any less with any other payment vendor that has a captive software system.
Yeah, I guess I'm still really bothered by the e-check fee. That one,
Bothered is a nice word.
yeah, that one really galls me. How's that? Is that more apt?
Calls is a good one.
I mean, well, I'll open it up to the board. Do we want to take any or consider taking any action on this? I mean, to me, it seems like our only leverage is to encourage BOCES to negotiate better fees.
Well, this isn't just BOCES or New York State. This is, from what he said, across the country.
Yeah.
This is anyone who uses their system has the same fee. So I would find it difficult to believe that a BOCES or all the BOCES even together could negotiate that to something different at this point. We can always request, we can always say, hey, we really want to look at this because we think the fees are out of whack. Can you do something for us with the BOCES or whatever? But we did ask the question just to understand Heartland Payment Systems.
Yeah, because I mean, we paid for the service, right?
We pay for the software in the cafeteria. We don't pay for the payment system service.
Right.
They are a billion with a B, a multi-billion-dollar industry. If we don't like it, we don't have to use that, is going to be the response. They're
Yeah.
not going to say like, oh, you're a school and so it's a.
But yeah,
I still ask.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe
That's, yeah, I agree. I think we should ask, but I don't think we should have expectations. I wonder if there are other, maybe a non-for-profit that's doing something along these lines that might have some way of providing the service that doesn't cost folks to send their own money in this way. Like
In a
themselves,
direct fashion that involves no people.
right.
I would be very concerned with any not-for-profit in that space because I'm not sure they could meet the payment protection requirements that would be needed. There's a reason there's money going to Harlan is because they do end-to-end. They protect all this as it's going through. So
You've been checking with other districts to see what other districts are using, and what are you finding?
it's Heartland Payment Systems generally because all the districts in this area use it across the state.
So it's not only the system you're using, it's also the system that we're utilizing for our food service programs, right? Which is our socioeconomic levels, which feeds all of our poverty, which feeds our state end, right? So all of those things are connected together.
Yes.
Correct.
And you don't have the opportunity to plug a different payment processor into.
It has to play nice with duplicates.
That's kind of the issue because I'm sure a lot of them don't want to play nice and are different enough that they won't necessarily play nice. And that was, even Heartland Payment Systems wasn't playing nice with NutriKids because of some gap between there. So upgrading to this new system actually makes it play nicer with its own software, which is really strange, yes. But I can't imagine an outside vendor would even work that well. And that's my concern.
Sounds like we need a coalition. And maybe I don't have time, but maybe the like national PTA organization or somebody would want to take up an issue like this. I mean, this impacts parents everywhere.
I'll work with BOCES. I'm sure if someone decides to push that forward at the PTA level or the school board's level or
Yeah. Like I said, I'm bothered. What?
I was just saying school board policy.
How would,
Yeah, our policy is to try to make things as accessible to people as possible and be as inclusive as possible, but we,
Yeah, but I think we as a conflicting policy matter, perhaps don't want to subsidize like individual students' ability to put money on their card. So I think
when there's another option.
when there's another option,
Right.
which is send in a check or cash or, so,
but I think parents are not gonna want, families are not gonna want to lose convenience that they rely upon as well. So the option still needs to be there for the convenience factor, but we don't want to be spending. Yeah.
yeah, all right. I think we know where we are.
We'll put cash and check first and then payment system so that people understand there's a preference. We'll do whatever we can to try to make sure people understand, hey, you don't need to pay a fee.
Yeah. I think, education on this will help.
Yeah.
that's what we have control over.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, leaving some time for fund balances and reserves.
So, as we do every year, we are reviewing where we think we're going to end up. On the revenue side, you'll see that it's projected a little over $30 million, which is actually about 200,000 higher than our total budget. That's due to a combination of factors. One of them being we got a larger prior year refund from BOCES than we were expecting. So that was about $200,000. We also have received significant interest revenue this year. And I bumped it up for next year a little bit, but I don't want to go too far because no one knows. I'm not even sure the Fed could tell you when the rates are going to go back down. So that's a good $400,000. And then there's the state aid that came in slightly higher than we projected of about $250,000. So that totals up to that $850,000 difference there. about 200,000 more than the allocated fund balance got put in. Projection is a little over 29 million in expenses, short of 30 million that we had projected. So there's going to be a difference there where there's money to be put in the fund balances reserves. We know we're taking a lot of money out of capital reserve over this next year. So we want to make sure that's as large as possible when we get to the end of this year. That's why I put in the maximum amount for 2018 reserve to be put in there. Put a placeholder 250,000 for the POs that are carried over for the next year. I don't know what that number will be. It could be anywhere from 100 to 300,000. Then I have to look at where we can actually put money and get it when things go poorly, if they do. Well, no, they're going to go poorly at some point, so we need to be able to access it. So what I've proposed is that we put a lot of it into the retirement funds reserve. You're allowed to put 2% of the TRS salaries per year, and that's what I've put in. DRS, there's technically no cap, so I put in a little more there. So you can see that it balances out that when you move all the money around, you end up with the prior year's balance plus the surplus we're going to have in this year to be the total amount. And there are actions that you'll be reviewing at the board meeting that will accomplish that, with the final being set before the tax levy.
And the 4% calculation is based on the addition of the funds that we didn't account for initially in our.
The 4% is next year's budget times 4%. So because it went up so significantly, that's why that number increased, the allocated fund balance.
Right. But I'm saying that the unallocated fund balance includes those additional funds in the 4% calculation, right?
Which additional fund?
I think the 4% is actually of the 34 million for this coming year, right?
Correct.
So we can actually
Oh,
go
okay.
super high because we have a bizarrely high next year.
Got it.
Yes, it
And
may be a situation next year if the budget comes in at 32, because we pull that out and then add the increases, that we may have to actually reduce that 4% reserve, that 4% unallocated fund balance.
And the 34, so when you do the 4%, it includes the one-time $3 million transfer from.
Because it's the total accrued budget, yes.
Got it. Okay. Anyone have questions on this? There's a resolution on the agenda tonight for us to approve these amounts. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's it. All right, that concludes our agenda. Thank you.
All right.
5 minutes.
5 minutes stretch.